It was May 1968, in a quiet neighborhood in Newcastle, England. Children were playing in the streets, skipping ropes, laughing. Life felt ordinary. But in one small corner of this peaceful town, something unthinkable was happening. 2 young boys were found dead, both under mysterious circumstances. At first, police thought it was a terrible accident, but when the evidence didn't fit, they realized something darker was at work. And the most shocking part? The person responsible wasn't a man. It wasn't even a teenager. It was an 11-year-old girl, calm, clever, and completely unafraid. Her name was Mary Bell, and she would go on to confuse detectives, stun psychologists, and force the world to ask, can a child truly understand evil? The girl from Scotswood. Mary Bell was born in May 1957, in a rough part of Newcastle called Scotswood. It was a neighborhood of poverty, small houses, smoke-stained walls, and families trying to survive after the war. From the beginning, Mary's life was far from normal. Her mother, Betty Bell, was only 17 when she gave birth. She worked as a prostitute and was rarely home. Neighbors said she didn't seem interested in raising a child. Mary's father was mostly absent, sometimes described as a petty criminal who came and went. The people who knew Mary as a child said she was strange, quiet one moment, explosive the next. At school, she was clever but manipulative. She could charm teachers when she wanted something, then turn cruel if things didn't go her way. It was as if 2 Marys lived inside one girl, one sweet and polite, and the other dark and unpredictable. A troubled childhood. Mary didn't grow up in a safe home. Reports later revealed that her early years were filled with neglect and emotional chaos. She often played unsupervised near construction sites and abandoned buildings. She was also known to be unusually bold for her age. She would talk to adults with confidence, sometimes even mimicking them. But there were also stories that made people uneasy. She liked to control younger kids, tell them what to do, how to play, where to go. If they refused, she'd get angry. Teachers noticed her lack of empathy. Once, when another child was injured, Mary laughed instead of helping. It was subtle, the kind of thing people noticed but didn't know what to do about. After all, she was just a child. The first death. On May 25, 1968, the body of a 4-year-old boy named Martin Brown was found in a derelict house. At first, police thought it was an accident. The area was full of dangerous abandoned places where children like to play. There were no obvious signs of struggle. But something felt off. The house was far from where Martin usually played. And some details, small marks, scattered tablets, didn't make sense. A few days later, police found a note inside a nearby nursery school. It was written in childish handwriting and said things like, "We did murder Martin Brown." At first, officers thought it was a prank. Kids often played around construction areas. Maybe someone was joking. But it wasn't a joke. Mary's behavior. At Martin's funeral, neighbors noticed a strange sight. Mary Bell stood near the coffin, watching. She didn't cry. She didn't look sad. She just stared, coldly, curiously, as if she were studying something. A few days later, she went to Martin's house and asked his mother, "Do you miss Martin?" When the mother said yes, Mary calmly replied, "That's good, because I killed him." The woman, in shock, thought Mary was joking. She told her to leave. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the little girl had meant it. The second tragedy. Just a few weeks later, another boy disappeared. 3-year-old Brian Howe. He was last seen playing, outside with neighborhood children. This time, the search was massive. Police and parents combed through the area for hours. Then, in a field behind some houses, they found him. He was gone, and there were disturbing signs that this was no accident. Detectives now realized what they were dealing with. Someone was deliberately targeting very young boys. But who would do such a thing in a small community like this? Then, something strange happened. As officers questioned children in the neighborhood, one girl stood out, Mary Bell. She seemed curious, even excited, about the investigation. She followed police officers around, asking questions like, "Are you looking for fingerprints? Do you think you'll find who did it?" One officer later said, "She didn't seem scared. She seemed interested." The clues point to Mary. Detectives started putting the pieces together. Both victims were from the same area. Both had been last seen with Mary and her friend, a 13-year-old girl named Norma Bell, no relation. When questioned, Mary was calm, confident, even a little defiant. She said she had seen an older boy with the victim, but her story kept changing. Norma, however, broke down. She told police that Mary had done it, that she had seen her choke one of the boys and laugh afterward. When police brought Mary back for questioning, they confronted her with what Norma said. Mary smiled and replied, "You can't prove anything." But the detectives already had proof. Tiny fingerprints, child-sized, had been found at the scene. The arrest. On August 5th, 1968, police arrived at the Bell household. Mary was calm as they read the charges. When they told her she was being arrested for the murder of Martin Brown and Brian Howe, she simply said, "That's fine by me." The officers were stunned. They had seen murderers before, but never one so young and never one so collected. The story of Mary Bell would soon travel across the world. Reporters called her the schoolgirl killer. Psychologists called her a mystery of the mind. But when the trial began, something unexpected happened. For the first time, the question wasn't just, what did she do? It was, why did she do it? And even today, that question still doesn't have a simple answer. By late summer of 1968, the name Mary Bell was known across England. The newspapers couldn't believe it. An 11-year-old girl charged with killing 2 innocent children. Headlines called her the Little Murderess, the Child Killer, and the Devil in a Dress. But inside the courtroom, the picture was far more complicated. Was Mary truly evil, or was she the broken product of a world that had failed her? The courtroom drama begins. The trial began in December 1968 at Newcastle Assizes, a grand, echoing courtroom where adult criminals were usually tried. But this time, sitting in the dock, was a child small enough to barely see over the rail. Mary wore a simple blue dress and white headband. She looked like a schoolgirl, calm, polite, and far too young for the crime she was accused of. Next to her sat her co-defendant Norma Bell, age 13. They weren't related, but the coincidence of their last names made the story even more eerie. The courtroom fell silent as the judge entered. Reporters filled every seat. This wasn't just a murder trial. It was a test of how far childhood innocence could stretch before it snapped. The prosecution's case. The prosecutor stood and began to speak in a calm, deliberate tone. He told the jury that this was not a story of an accident. It was a story of control and cruelty. He said that Mary Bell had strangled for pleasure, that she was fascinated by power and by the reactions of those around her. He showed the jury drawings Mary had made in school, sketches of children being harmed, of people crying, of police officers at crime scenes. He also read witness statements from other kids in the neighborhood. They describe how Mary had boasted about hurting animals, how she liked to scare the babies. The evidence painted a chilling picture, not of an adult monster, but of a child who understood fear and enjoyed watching others feel it. The defense, a child lost in chaos. Mary's defense lawyer, however, saw a different story. He didn't deny that something terrible had happened, but he argued that Mary didn't truly understand what she had done. He told the jury that Mary Bell's childhood was filled with neglect, abuse, and instability. He said her mother, Betty, had damaged Mary's sense of safety from birth, that the little girl never knew love, only control and pain. He argued that Mary had learned to mimic emotion, but never feel it, that her actions were not driven by evil, but by confusion. Experts were called to testify. One child psychologist described Mary as intelligent but emotionally empty, someone who could imitate empathy but didn't connect with it. The question now wasn't if Mary had done it. Everyone knew she had. The question was why. Mary's behavior in court. Throughout the trial, Mary's behavior fascinated everyone. Sometimes she sat quietly, staring straight ahead, blinking slowly. Other times she smiled, not nervously, but as if the attention didn't bother her. Reporters wrote that she seemed oddly mature, controlled, and unmoved. Once, when a witness described one of the boy's injuries, Mary was seen yawning. It wasn't a yawn of boredom, more like someone pretending not to care. One juror later said, "She was just a child, but she looked at us like she was older than all of us." Norma's testimony. Then came the biggest twist. Norma Bell, Mary's older friend, was called to testify. Norma cried through much of it. She said she had watched Mary kill Brian Howe, but had been too afraid to stop her. She claimed Mary laughed afterwards, saying, "I like hurting things. It makes me feel funny inside." Mary shook her head as Norma spoke, sometimes smiling faintly, sometimes staring at the floor. Her calmness only made the jury more uneasy. But the defense argued that Norma was lying to protect herself, that she had taken part too. It was a case of two children pointing fingers at each other, and the truth seemed to shift every time one of them spoke. The verdict. After 9 tense days, the jury retired to deliberate. They returned after hours of discussion, their faces pale and weary. For Norma Bell, the verdict was not guilty. The jury believed she had been manipulated, not a willing participant. But for Mary Bell, the verdict was different. The foreman stood and said the words slowly. Guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The judge agreed that Mary was mentally disturbed, but not fully aware of her actions. He sentenced her to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, meaning for an indefinite period until the government decided she was no longer a danger. Mary didn't cry. She simply nodded and looked down at her shoes. The world reacts. The British public didn't know what to think. Some were horrified that such a young child could kill. Others were heartbroken, wondering what could turn an 11-year-old into a killer. Psychologists, politicians, and journalists debated for months. Was Mary Bell a monster or a victim herself? For the first time in modern history, the nation began to question how it treated children who committed terrible crimes. Was prison the answer, or therapy? Mary became a symbol, not just of crime, but of a society trying to understand its own failures. Life behind walls. After the trial, Mary was sent to a secure children's home. Not a regular prison, but a place where young offenders were kept under watch. She was the youngest inmate anyone there had ever seen. Staff described her as bright, but unsettling. She followed rules, but always seemed to be calculating, observing. She spent her teenage years moving between different institutions. Every time she seemed to improve, something small would remind her of what she'd done, and the coldness would return. By 1980, at age 23, Mary was released from custody. She was given a new identity and a chance to start over. She disappeared from the public eye. But the question that haunted England never left. Can someone who does something so terrible at 11 ever truly change? Years later, Mary Bell would resurface, not as a criminal, but as a mother herself. And when the world found out, outrage erupted all over again. But what no one expected was how calm and ordinary she had become. A woman who had once committed one of the most shocking crimes in British history, now living quietly, blending in, hiding in plain sight. The child who fooled the police had grown up, and some wondered if she was fooling everyone again.